Well, everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the M2 iPad Air that Apple just made and compare it against the iPad Air M1 model that came out about 2 years ago and see which one is a better one for you. Now, I will definitely tell you if it's between one of these particular devices, the M2 iPad Air is probably going to be the better one for everybody. It's slightly more expensive than a used M1 iPad Air, but I will tell you between both, you're definitely going to be getting the overall better one inside of the M2 iPad Air than the M1 iPad Air. So kind of keep that in mind. If you want to pick up either one of these particular iPads though, links will be down in the description. You can get that from there and you can help support the channel at the same exact time. Now, starting off with the outside of both these particular iPads, design-wise, they're kind of similar. There's a lot of overlap here between both these devices, which is very nice. I think if you're going to pick up one iPad over the other one, you're definitely going to feel like both of them have a very similar type of design, which is good. With the M1 iPad Air 5 though, you're getting more colors that you can choose from, like one additional color, but even that's like not that big of a deal. With the M1 iPad Air, you're getting the 10.9-inch liquid retina display on the front, and it's a good panel. It's a very decent panel for what you're getting. It's a liquid retina display, has P3 wide color gamut, it's a true tone display, and it has that anti-reflective coating too, which is very nice. With the M2 iPad Air though, this one is a little bit of a different story. It's slightly bigger. It's an 11-inch panel this time. So it's funny Apple went from the 10.9-inch model to the 11-inch model, considering they're almost the same exact type of design. It's giving you the same exact features as the other iPad as well, so you're still getting anti-reflective coating, you're still getting true tone, you're still getting all the other things across the board too, which is very nice to have. You have a little bit of bezel all around the particular iPad too. So I do think this is a nice touch. I think if you're going through and getting some sort of an iPad, I do like the fact that an iPad can give you this type of feature set of having a very, very kind of like bezel-free design, which is super cool, and I do like that a lot between both of them. Is there one that's perfect? No, they're both kind of roughly around the same thing, but I do think if I'm going to pick up one, I definitely would rather just pick up the newer one. Now, both of them have USB Type-C ports on the bottom, but neither one of them are Thunderbolt ports. So these are just your standard run-of-the-mill USB-C ports that you get inside of another device. There's no cool Thunderbolt features that you get on the other ones, but still, I do think it's a really, really nice, display nonetheless, and it's a good-looking, USB Type-C port if you want to go and utilize it for other things too. You're getting a headphone jack on both as well, which is nice. Flat sides on all of them, which is super cool to have. I love having flat sides here, and you're getting that type of capability between both. Now, another big thing is with its Apple Pencil. It connects to that flat side, so both of them support almost the same exact Apple Pencils. The Apple Pencil Pro is supported on the M2 iPad Air, but all the other Apple Pencils that you can use on one are usable on the other, including the Apple Pencil 2 and the Apple Pencil USB Type-C model. So those are just some things to keep in mind there too. Both of them are giving you a single camera setup on the top left corner as well, which again is a very nice thing to have, and that kind of covers it up. Both of them have accessories that you can use like magic keyboards and things like that, but beyond that, there's not really like insane differences here, and realistically speaking, going from one iPad to the other, you're going to be kind of getting the same type of design when it kind of comes down to it. Another slight difference here, or something else you'd probably want to keep in mind, is the price tag. The iPad Air M2 model basically costs the same thing as the M1 iPad Air costs, when it first came out. But the thing you're going to have to keep in mind is that if you're trying to go through and get the better iPad here, you're definitely going to be getting the better one for a price tag, probably instead of the M1 iPad Air. This one is just going to cost you significantly less money in the used market, considering that thing, has already been out for quite a bit of time, for like 2 years now. That one is just going to be a substantially cheaper iPad that you could probably buy, and that would probably be the one I'd recommend a vast majority of people to go and pick up as of this point. So from a price tag standpoint, that kind of covers it up there too, because the price tag here is slightly different between both of them. Now, on top of that, you're also getting the cameras on these things. And I will tell you, like I said before, the cameras on them are very, very good for the most part. The M2 iPad Air on the backside is giving you a single 12 megapixel camera, and the M1 iPad Air 5 was also giving you a single 12 megapixel camera on the backside. And the front cameras are also 12 megapixel ultra-wide cameras too. So what's the difference? Well, for one, the camera on the iPad Air M2 model is actually in landscape mode. So this is something that's very interesting, because if you're going through and using that particular iPad, you're going to notice that if you're in a FaceTime call or whatever, that camera is going to be like in landscape mode, which I kind of like. It's a little bit of a more unique design, and I actually do like that a lot inside of that particular iPad. Instead of the iPad Air M2 model or M1 model, it's basically the same type of camera layout that you'd expect on any other type of device. So it's basically right in front, like on the top side of that particular iPad. And I think that's totally fine. I think if you're getting any sort of iPad for the most part, you're going to be getting a very, very good experience with the camera. But as I've said before, the camera quality on these things are pretty much in line with something like, basically like an iPhone XR. So if you have something like an iPhone XR, a device like the iPhone, 10R camera is basically what you're going to be getting quality-wise on these iPads. So I would ask the question, do you have an iPhone that's better than an iPhone 10R? Think of iPhones like the iPhone 11, 12, 13. If you have any of those iPhones, those ones are going to be giving you a better camera overall than these particular iPads. So from that side, that doesn't even make that much sense to go and buy these particular iPads either for the camera. It's a nice, to have a nice camera on these iPads if you already have them, but I wouldn't really go from one iPad to the other, based off the camera, unless you're relying on your iPad camera and your front camera all the time. Then that might be a little bit of a different story. But other than that, not really that big of a deal. In terms of the chipsets, this is also a slight difference here. Because we're comparing the M1 chipset to the M2 chipset, I don't know what the difference is going to be between these two, devices. They're both desktop level chipsets. I think the M2 chipset came out like in 2021 or 2022. The M1 chipset came out in 2020. So just that right there is also another very big difference in terms of how long these iPad chipsets are going to last. Typically, previously, we could look at an Apple A13 Bionic chip and an A14 Bionic chip and see, hey, the A14 is probably going to last 1 year longer. These ones, I'm not too sure. Is it going to be 1 year, 2 years, 5 years? It's probably not going to be that long, but it's probably going to be more than a year. It's probably going to be closer to 2 years. So that right there is going to be another thing to kind of keep in mind here too. It's definitely not going to be the end of the world, but that is going to be one thing you're going to have to probably keep in mind as you're going through and getting one of these types of iPads. Now, on top of that, because of these chipsets, like I said before, we're comparing the M1 chipset and the M2 chipset. So when it comes down to the performance side of these things, the iPad Air, M1 model is giving you the M1 chipset inside, which I think is very good. The M2 iPad Air is going to be giving you that M2 chipset inside. So these are both desktop level chipsets inside of them, which is very cool. I love having this type of capability, and having those desktop level chipsets inside these things is very, very nice, and it's definitely one of my most favorite features between both of them. Now, if I'm going through and picking up one sort of iPad, I definitely would say the performance between both is going to be very solid. I'm still using an M1 Pro chipset inside of my particular MacBook, and I have a really good time with it. With the M2 chipsets, it's going to be a little bit faster than the M1 model, but for the average person, you're probably not going to notice that big of a difference. To give you a little bit of perspective, they both have 8 gigabytes of RAM, which is totally cool, 8 core CPUs, 10 core GPU inside of the iPad Air M2 model, 8 core GPU inside the M1 iPad Air, and basically a 16 core neural engine in both, and it's basically the same exact thing. You're just getting a little bit better of a GPU. But other than, I don't think the average person is even really going to care about that when it comes down to it. So I do think from the performance side, you're going to be getting very, very good performance between both. And I definitely will tell you when it comes down to both of them, very solid experience for the most part, which is really, really cool. So if I'm going from one over the other, I probably wouldn't care that much about the chipsets or anything, because both of them are still very good performing chipsets when it comes down to it. So to kind of sum it up, what I'll definitely tell you is I do think the M1 iPad Air is probably the better one for the average person just because of its price tag. I do think it's a significantly cheaper iPad that you can buy, and I do think that one probably for a vast majority of people makes more sense to buy. I do think though for the M2 iPad Air, if you have all the money in the world and you want a better iPad, then clearly go for this one. This is the better iPad between both, but I think the M1 iPad Air might be a better deal for some people out there. So from that side, that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.